Shane Warne trying to get that fourth wicket.
And he's gone!
It's the 3rd of May, 1995, and Australia are celebrating a series win over the West Indies in time-honoured fashion. Waugh. And the genius of bowler Shane Warne.
First ball.
For the past 2 decades, a country of just over 20 million people has dominated the empire of cricket. But how?
Pure dominance by the whole Australian team.
This is the story of the way Australia turned the sport of their privileged English colonisers into a game for all.
The important difference between this country and England is that the idea of class distinction is something that we've prided ourselves on not having.
From the outback to the suburbs, Australians would play cricket their way.
We have a crack and we have a red-hot dip, we play it hard. That's how we're brought up, we play to win, but we're also the first to have great mates off the field.
Cricket would provide a common bond, as a young nation united behind heroes like Don Bradman.
I saw him play in the first match I ever went to at the SCG, and Bradman suddenly became my hero because he got 3 centuries in the remaining 3 games.
Australian cricket is intertwined with the country's emergence from Britain's shadow, as a nation in its own right, and as a mighty adversary in the Ashes.
We love our sport, and we love the cricket team. You know, and for an Australian, since the age of about 5, it's been belted into me that you can't let the Poms win anything.
The same qualities that raised a nation from the heat and dust helped build a cricket team that would dominate the world. Determination, defiance, the desire to win, and an unquenchable fighting spirit.
When we walked out on the park, we looked like 11 prize fighters entering the ring, and that's what I wanted us to be.
He's done in between his legs.
Lolly. Come on, boy. And there's Richie Benaud looking as happy as any man has a right to be.
Bradman has scored his century before lunch.
Australia, a country with a reputation for scorching heat.
36 degrees when we were out there just before play began, up to 38 now.
It's a nice place to play cricket, if you like the game hot, hard and fast.
The climate out here is very conducive to outdoor lifestyle in general, and then in a cricketing sense it's fantastic. Such a rare occasion that rain would affect a game of cricket, and then hence the outfield's fast and dry, and wickets, you know, hard, really firm.
In a harsh climate where grass pitches were often a luxury, generations of children turned rugged playing conditions to their advantage.
In Australia, we all played on concrete pitches or concrete with matting on, but that was all you had. If you were at primary school and just playing in ordinary fashion, you certainly didn't play on turf pitches. It was good practice to have been on concrete because there was plenty of bounce in that.
The better cricketers like bounce in a pitch. It's good for batsmen, but it's also obviously good for fast bowlers, but it's also good for spinners. You know, a spinner who can get a bit of bounce, he's happy. It's the perfect sort of upbringing to go on and play a high level of cricket.
Australians have been playing cricket since the country was established as a British penal colony at the beginning of the 19th century. By challenging the forces of the Crown at cricket, Australia's new settlers were taking their first steps towards nationhood.
In the 1830s and 40s in Sydney, you have the garrisons that were stationed here forming themselves into cricket teams and playing against the local cricket clubs. And one of the reasons why cricket has been so successful is that it has managed to serve both the purpose of paying imperial homage and exercising Australian nationalism, being an outlet for our own desire to run our own affairs.
In 1901, the Active Federation transformed 5 British colonies into one new nation, Australia. At the same time, the foundations of the domestic game were being laid, with the beginning of the grade cricket competition. It offers talented players the chance to rise up through the ranks on merit alone, unlike in the mother country.
We've never had anything here as there was in England, where professionals and amateurs played out of separate change rooms, and I imagine that was a stultifying influence on cricket in England, whereas here, if you're good enough, you'll get there, and I think that has been a fundamental strength of the game here.
The best player of them all would emerge from grade cricket in 1927. A batsman from the small town of Bowral, New South Wales. Don Bradman.
And now let us see the Prince of Batsmen in action. Don Bradman, just come to man's estate, and already known as the most phenomenal run-getting machine the world has ever seen.
Born in 1908, Bradman grew up in a country scarred by the massacre of its troops at Gallipoli in the First World War, and struggling to cope with the Great Depression.
The 30s were the Depression years, which were tough going for people, and you were looking for some role model, and he became that as a cricketer, and he represented Australia, represented the country, really.
As a child, Bradman honed his cricketing skills by using a stump to hit a golf ball against a water tank. With incessant practice, Bradman turned a natural gift into complete mastery of the art of batting.
But there's Bradman to reckon with, and Don goes all out to put runs on the board. He puts 50 to his own net.
The thing that amazed me about him was his quickness of his eye, his perfect position of his feet, and the ability to pick up the line and the length of the ball quicker than anybody else. He wasn't afraid to cross the line, square cuts, pull shots, hook shots. He was just a freak, that's all he was, just a freak.
Well, his approach was tremendous, great concentration, had all the strokes, got the runs very quickly. Whether he got 100, 200 or 300, he got them very quickly.
Bradman has scored his century before lunch.
Don Bradman, the possessor of more records than a gramophone company.
Bradman's record-breaking scoring feats in the domestic game caused a sensation in Australia. But it was against England that his legend would be born. In the 1930 Ashes series, Bradman dominated England's bowlers, scoring 974 runs.
That's his 200. Well done. The scoreboard reads remarkable at the end of the first day. 458 is the total, out of which Bradman has made 309 not out. It's a world's record.
When he started to play his matches again in Australia, you got into a situation where people would flock to the grounds when they knew he was going to bat. And if he got out, they'd go.
Don Bradman, as a batsman he can surely on the wood. For when he gets into bat, he knocks every record.
Bradman's heroics made him a highly marketable commodity. His image used to sell everything, from biscuits to sports equipment. But in person, he came across as the Australian everyman.
Even though he was the most famous man in Australia and easily one of the most famous sportsmen in the world, in Australia he lived a very ordinary life. You know, he sold sporting goods, he sold shares, he married his childhood sweetheart, he raised 2 children in the only house that he ever bought. This is a country that exalts the ordinary man, and it was a sign of Australia's veneration of that ordinary man that they allowed Bradman to lead an ordinary life.
Don Bradman, every Aussie dips his lid to you.
Australia's ordinary hero carried a nation's hopes of victory in the 1932 Ashes series. England's visiting cricketers had one objective: to stop the Don. England developed a bowling technique known as leg theory, designed to restrict Bradman's free-flowing style of play.
Larwood bowls to a leg trap to which Bradman falls a victim when he has only scored 8.
Australia were forced into a corner by bodyline bowling aimed directly at the batsman. They had 2 options: fend off the ball and risk offering an easy catch to the waiting fielders, or take a blow.
The umpire scrutinises every delivery of Larwood's for a no ball. The English players are very distressed when Oldfield is struck on the head, Larwood again being the unlucky bowler.
The controversial bodyline tactics would place the relationship between England and Australia under immense strain.
Well, I think it's been characterised as the War of Independence that Australia never fought from England. It seemed from here such an unfair way to deal with the problem of Bradman.
Bradman appears. He is not very comfortable against Larwood.
I think there was a sense of mortification for Bradman. To find that the English were prepared to play to the limit of the laws was really a little bit confronting. Some Australians, of course, never really forgave the English that sense of disillusionment.
A major diplomatic incident was only averted when Australia withdrew accusations that England had used unsportsmanlike behaviour to win the series. The outbreak of war in 1939 reunited Britain and Australia in the fight against common enemies.
Fellow Australians, it is my melancholy duty to inform you officially Great Britain has declared war upon Germany, and that as a result, Australia is also at war.
Australia came of age in its battles against Japan, but the shared experience of enduring a long and painful conflict would bring Britain and Australia closer together. In the spirit of peace, cricket would help renew the ties of affection between the 2 countries when Don Bradman took an Australian team to England in 1948.
We are very glad indeed. In fact, I cannot tell you how delighted we are to be back in England once again. We're very anxious to get on shore and get on with the business.
There is a sense of pilgrimage about that Australian side going to England after the Second World War. They take cases of food to present to embattled Englishmen in reciprocation of the hospitality that they expect. And they go about with a sense of trying to entertain, to lift spirits.
As Bradman's side embarked on an unprecedented run of victories, the press hailed them as the Invincibles.
Every foot of spectator space is taken up at Headingley, the bogey ground of England Test cricket, as Bradman leads his Invincibles onto the field.
They all wanted to see him because he's been such a tremendous player over there. He's made squillions of runs every time he's been there, and they just wanted to see him one last time.
Bradman might have had top billing, but players like Arthur Morris and Neil Harvey thrilled the crowd with their batting exploits.
And Australia's youngest player, Harvey, came to the rescue. Not only was he playing in his first test over here at the age of 19, he also made a century.
I can see no point in being a defensive cricketer. I always think that cricketers should be entertainers, and I tried to be one. I always went out with the idea, you've got the ball, I've got the bat, I'm going to beat you. Simple as that.
When the Ashes came to an end at the Oval, Australia were on course to finish the series undefeated. And Bradman needed just 4 runs to finish his career with an almost inconceivable batting average of 100.
Here's the applause for Bradman as he comes in. Well, it's a wonderful reception. The whole crowd is standing, and the England team are joining in, and led by Yardley, 3 cheers for the Don as he gets to the wicket.
Bradman went out late in the day. There was some thought that he might have sent a night watchman out, but he wouldn't do that. He went out himself, and Hollies bowled him a good one first ball.
He bowls, Bradman goes back across his wicket and pushes the ball gently in the direction of the Houses of Parliament.
And a beautiful wrong in the next ball.
No run, still 117 for 1. 2 slips, a silly mid-off and a forward short leg close to him as Hollies pitches the ball up slowly and he's bowled.
Arthur Morris, batting at the other end of the pitch, couldn't believe his eyes.
And he was bowled for a duck. It's extraordinary. Dead quiet everywhere, you know. And everybody was stunned, including myself. I think I heard somebody say, well bowled, Eric.
What do you say under those circumstances? I wonder if you see a ball very clearly. In your last test in England, a ground where you played out some of the biggest cricket of your life, and where the opposing team have just stood round you and given you 3 cheers and the crowd has clapped you all the way to the wicket. I wonder if you really see the ball at all.
Bradman's career had come to a close in a moment of anticlimax that became known as the Duck of Destiny. Australia finished the series with a 4th victory, and Bradman bowed out having scored, on average, 99.94 runs per innings. It was a rare hint of fallibility in a player with almost superhuman abilities.
I once said to Keith Miller, what a sorrow it was that Bradman had retired from first-class cricket in 1950, and that was the year I came into the game, and therefore I never had the opportunity to bowl to him. And Miller looked straight ahead. He didn't even turn his head. He said, son, we all have at least one lucky break in our lives. You can count that as being yours.
Bradman's batting to Larwood. That gives him his century.
He's always going to be above everyone else, and we're proud that we've got him. We're proud that he nearly averaged 100. He was probably one of the greatest sports people ever. And it's something for us to say, well, I played for Australia in the baggy green cap and I followed in the footsteps of Don Bradman.
Bradman retired when relations between Britain and Australia were at their most cordial.
It's almost summer, and I can almost feel that sweet sunshine.
In 1954, the young Queen Elizabeth II was invited to tour the country by Anglophile Prime Minister Robert Menzies. But in an era of prosperity and conformity, Australian cricket had become dull, slow, and just a bit too English.
The wicket is expected to favour the batsman, but Bailey, with characteristic caution, is not prepared to take any risks in the opening over.
They'd had a series out here in 1958-9 where they'd won the Ashes 4-0, but it had been a dismal spectacle and virtually sent the crowd to sleep. If you look at Australian cricket in the 1950s, the players look fairly staid, they look fairly restrained, they look almost English. You could almost mistake them at a distance for Englishmen.
From the last ball of the over, Milton's stroke to leg results in the first runs of the match.
If the game was to reignite the passion of the public, it would need to become more exuberant, more Australian, more like Richie Benaud.
England collapsed suddenly and sensationally.
He's been bowled.
I was never worried about being criticised for being over-exuberant. I'd have been worried if people were saying I was under-exuberant.
Richie Benaud, an all-rounder with a natural instinct for leadership, would liven up the game with his ingenious spin bowling and spirited celebrations.
I can remember a lot of the ex-players thought that was awful. You didn't go around slapping one another on the back, but I wanted to be happy when we were doing well.
Oh, magnificent catch by Simpson.
And Brian Johnston used to chuckle and say that he supposed the next thing would be a bit of hugging and kissing, but we never got to that stage.
Now, the other thing I'd like to congratulate you on is the whole attitude of the game. You came here saying you were going to play bright cricket. You have done. Are you happy that it's gone right like that?
We've given the public as much good cricket as we possibly can. We've always tried. That's the big thing.
Benaud's brand of bright cricket provided a glimpse of a more confident Australia. But as long as Robert Menzies was in power, the country would struggle to shrug off the dead hand of empire.
I did but see her passing by, and yet I love her till I die.
There was a long period of Conservative government in Australia from 1949 to 1972. The country had been effectively run, but not particularly imaginatively run. And there was a pent-up desire in Australian society for change.
Time for freedom, time for moving, it's time to be free, yes it's time.
The election of Gough Whitlam in 1972 ushered in a new era of national pride and assertiveness in Australia.
What Australia is trying to do is to establish an independent identity in the world. Our actions are in no way anti-British. They're simply pro-Australian.
After decades of following Britain's lead, Australians began to discover their own identity, embracing homegrown heroes like comedian Paul Hogan.
I've never had any trouble getting Shearers to talk. I've had trouble getting them to shut up, that's all.
Hogan represented the typical Aussie larrikin, a lovable rogue with a fondness for beer and Sheilas that much of Australia had once been too embarrassed to acknowledge.
It's so long been a colony out here, and they've had this hang-up about being descended from the convicts and all that sort of thing, that they're sort of ashamed of people like me to a certain extent. But suddenly they've grown out of that. They realise it's a big place now and they stand on their own feet, and they don't need help off anybody. You know, it might be the other way around. I think England in a couple of years' time probably need help off us. You know, we'll help you out, yours. Well, I think you should all get together, get into this, make up a bundle, and send it over to Britain. I've also dropped in here the old Don Bradman book on how to play cricket. I need a few lessons.
If anyone was going to give England a lesson, it was Australia's new captain, Ian Chappell, a player who combined the brash appeal of Paul Hogan with the inspirational leadership of Gough Whitlam.
It's 4 runs. It's a nice shot.
This whole upbringing was about aggressive batsmanship, and so that really moulded my style.
Chappell would use the hook shot to stamp his authority on England's bowlers in the 1972 Ashes.
And he goes for the hook.
To me, the hook shot was never just about the number of runs you scored from it.
So the bouncer hooked away again beautifully for yet another 4.
It was also about the psychological advantages that you could gain from playing the hook shot.
It's a fine shot.
And I always felt that someone in the top order had to take on the fast bowlers and hook them.
Ian Chappell.
So that you established, okay, you might want to bowl some bouncers at us, but you do it at a risk.
That's the hook shot, and he's middled that one all right. So still accepting the challenge is Ian Chappell.
Chappell's Australia set out to prove England's tabloid doubters wrong in the '72 Ashes series.
We had a manager, Ray Steele, who was a very competitive guy, and he reads out these headlines. Aussies take it lying down. And he thumped the table and he said, "Pig's bloody arse they do."
It was a rallying cry that inspired Ian's brother, Greg Chappell.
Here's D'Oliveira to Greg Chappell. It's a fine shot, and he needn't run for that. Off the back foot, sweetly timed, 4 runs.
We were bullish, we were aggressive, we were confident in our own abilities, and we went out there and we played to win.
That's it, pushed away, no bother at all. Look at Marsh, look at Sheehan, absolutely delighted. There's joyous Australians up on their balcony.
The Chappell gang that blazed a trail in the 70s boasted a bowling partnership famed for terrorising batsmen from both ends of the pitch. Dennis Lilly and Jeff Thomson.
Oh, and he's out.
I'm trying to scare him, trying to probably hurt him more than anything else, so that he at least knows you're around.
Well done, Alvaro. None of the Pommies can run as quick as this thing.
It was really, really quick. You know, I mean, it's hard for me to say. You sound like like you're bragging, but I know it was. I know what I did.
Thomson to Lloyd. Can hit badly there that time.
Lilly and Thomson had learned to use their pace to get the ball to bounce high off hard Australian wickets, a delivery known as a bouncer that struck fear into batsmen wearing little protection.
Here's another bouncer. That's quite a performance to get one so high on this pitch.
It's a short ball and generally around somewhere in the middle of the pitch. But it's aimed to be up here, you know, around your throat sort of thing, so it's awkward. You can't play the shot, and if somebody plays it, they're trying to defend themselves more than anything.
Even after bodyline, there was nothing in the rules to prevent bowling at the batsman's body. It was up to him to get out of the way.
You bowl a bouncer, make sure you hit somebody. You miss, I hit, and then it hurts.
There's no doubt that those two together were as formidable a pace attack as I'd ever bumped into. And Derek Underwood came out to bat, and he said to me, well, you know, what do you reckon? And I said, mate, it's a straightforward question of fighting for your life.
Thomson bowling to Greg.
Oh, bowled him! Yorked him, leg stump. They would have been nervous. Don't worry, I could see they were nervous. And the opposition, as I walked back to my mark, they were there, well, the ones that were waiting to come in, lined up. I just used to look at them and say, you're next.
They were terrific to handle, and you know, I mean, the sign they had here at the SCG during 74-5 Ashes series. What was it? Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. If Lilly don't get you, Tomo must. It was that summed it up.
The crowd who cheered on Australia saw themselves in players like Lilly and Tomo. The fans were fellow larrikins, well acquainted with Mr. Booze.
Mr. Booze, oh, Mr. Booze.
Matter. You got enough, have you?
Yeah.
How many are you taking in?
A dozen.
A dozen. Is that all you need for the day?
Yeah.
Mischief maker, Mr. Booze.
So it was just jam-packed, the atmosphere was electric, they were allowed to bring their own alcohol in.
You got enough for the day then, have you?
Oh, yeah, we got enough. Nice hot day. See you later.
Thank you.
So they'd bring in eskies, you know, absolute giant eskies full of booze and be on it all day, so, you know, but by lunchtime they were starting to hum. Lily and I'd be running the bowl, they'd be yelling out, kill, 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 you know, our names. And it was like being in a gladiator's ring. It really was. It was just unbelievable back in those days. So those batsmen that were playing against us must have thought, what the hell am I doing out here? I thought this was a cricket match. I thought they were at bloody Madison Square Garden.
There's an enormous feeling between the public and that team. They were a good bunch. One, they were a good bunch of blokes. Two, we could play cricket and we played a decent brand of cricket. And three, we had a damn good time together.
You make me laugh. You make me cry. Mr.
The exploits of the Chappell gang brought fans back to cricket in their thousands. The money might have been piling into the coffers of the Australian Cricket Board, but the players weren't getting it.
When I first played for Australia, it was $200 for a test match. $200. Mate, we used to drink that on the first night.
We looked at each other and we said, now hang on. You know, the gate takings are $250,000. We're being, 12 of us, we're being paid $200. That's $2,400. OK, so England have got to get some. Where the hell's the rest of it going?
The Australian Cricket Board, under the leadership of Don Bradman, clung to the belief that the honour of representing Australia was compensation enough.
The administration at the time was mired in a bygone era, and the feeling was, well, if you blokes don't want to play, we'll find some others that do. And we felt that we were not being treated well and we weren't being respected. And we reacted accordingly. We let it be known that we weren't happy with the situation.
Word of the players' resentment reached one of the new breed of Australian businessmen, Kerry Packer, a media mogul who had long coveted the TV rights to cricket.
Well, I like the game. I enjoy watching cricket. I don't think because I enjoy the game that necessarily I have to agree with all the traditions.
He went to the Australian Cricket Board. He said, we're all whores, what's your price? And they sent him on his way, thinking that they'd never hear from him again. Well, Packer thought that if they won't give me the rights to Australian Test matches, I'll create my own. I'll create my own independent, outlaw, televised cricket circuit, and I'll call it World Series Cricket.
These are the men who put the cat among the pigeons. They believe the concept of World Series cricket will be good for cricket and good for them. Their revolution has already won fairer rewards for cricketers. That was one of their aims. They have another, to bring you the best cricket played anywhere in the world. 55
Behind the scenes, Packer had persuaded many of the world's best players to abandon their national sides and join unofficial Australia, West Indies and rest of the world teams. Many in the press and public saw it as a betrayal.
I was at Melbourne Airport and I was just walking along and some guy came up to me and he said, "You're a traitor." Now, I mean, that word really gets up my nose at the best of times. And I grabbed hold of this bloke and I started abusing him, and one of his mates came over and he said, "Oh, go easy on him, mate, he's had a heart attack." I said, "If he calls me a traitor again, he'll have another bloody heart attack."
Launched in December 1977, World Series cricket got off to a slow start.
Australian spectators have been a bit dubious about the Packer series in the sense they thought it was a bit of an exhibition. They thought as though their players perhaps weren't really trying. Even though there was a lot of money on the line, did it really matter?
If the players were to convince the public that they were in it for more than just the money, they would need to show it on the pitch.
Andy Roberts here, the most experienced of the West Indian fast bowlers, and a great fast bowler in his own right. Coming on to see if he can put the brake on. Hit him.
When Australian batsman David Hookes had his jaw broken by West Indian bowler Andy Roberts, the intensity of the competition was no longer in doubt.
And he's in trouble.
In a sense, David Hookes shed blood for World Series cricket, and by his blood he authenticated the exercise.
And he's retired hurt for the moment on 81.
Basically, it was unbelievably tough cricket. We also had in the initial stages some very ordinary pitches. And so, you know, that's why the crash helmet was born, or the helmet was born.
And he's got him on the helmet, I think. Could be the first strike, and Lilly, the man to do it. Well, it's the first time we've seen that helmet tested out in action, and here it is.
Kerry Packer wanted it to be tough. He wanted it to be entertaining. Above all, he wanted it to rate on television. I think he quite liked the idea of revving the game up as well.
You've been training all the winter, and there's not a team that's fitter, and that's the way it's got to be. Because you're up against the best you know. This is super test, you know, and you've got to beat the best the world has seen. Lily's pounding down like a machine. Pascoe's making divots in the green. Marsh is taking wickets. Brooks, he's clearing pickets. And the Chappell's eyes have got that killer gleam. Come on, Aussie, come on, come on. Come on, Aussie, come on, come on.
World Series cricket finally won over the Australian public, with radical innovations like night games and brightly coloured clothing. Players were now well-paid professionals, well protected under helmets. Packer had reinvented the game as a prime-time spectacle with its own theme tune.
The Australians have won by 5 wickets. And here comes the stampede.
Cricket needed a revolution. You know, we were stuck in the 40s and 50s, maybe even the 20s and 30s, and cricket needed to be dragged, you know, kicking and screaming into the 20th century, and that's what World Series cricket did.
Packer had proved his point, and in 1979, the World Series came to an end when the Australian Cricket Board finally agreed to collaborate. The rush to fill Packer's TV schedules with officially sanctioned cricket would lead to a punishing timetable of test and one-day games that put new captain Greg Chappell under immense pressure.
The captain in those days served almost as the coach, the manager, the media manager. He was doing everything. So players, even a player as great as Greg Chappell, was beginning to buckle under the strain.
In 1981, New Zealand needed a 6 from the last ball to tie a dramatic one-day match against Australia and force yet another game.
On discussion, well, it looks to me as if they're going to bowl underarm off the last ball. Marsh is saying no, mate, but I'm sure he's going to bowl an underarm delivery.
Greg Chappell would deny New Zealand the chance to tie the game by instructing his youngest brother, Trevor, to bowl underarm. A desperate measure to avoid another match.
The batsmen have been told, and this is possibly a little bit disappointing, they're going to bowl an underarm. They haven't believed it. And that's a disappointing finish. Disappointed Brian McKechnie, the crowd boo, and it's all over.
In a bid to relieve the pressure on Chappell, Kim Hughes began to share the captaincy. But he too found the burden of leading a weakened side against opponents like the mighty West Indies too much to bear.
The constant speculation, criticism and innuendo by former players and section of the media over the past 4 or 5 years have finally taken their toll. It is in the interest of the team It is in the interest of the team Australian cricket
Kim Hughes' tearful resignation in 1984 left Alan Border in charge. If Australia was going to return to winning ways, he needed help. The first step was the appointment of a veteran player as the country's first full-time coach, Bob Simpson.
We just need to get back to the simple fundamentals of the game, you know, the work ethics, doing it right. And that's what we worked on, running between wickets, bowling line and length, and In the end, we became a very, very competent team.
Simpson's training regime propelled Australia to an unexpected victory in the 1987 Cricket World Cup. At a time when the country had become the focus of the world's attention, thanks to Crocodile Dundee, a film part funded by Kerry Packer and cricketers Greg Chappell, Rod Marsh and Dennis Lilly. But it was through sporting glory that Australia looked to enhance this new international prestige. With sports fanatic Bob Hawke running the country, the world's first specialist cricket academy was set up to nurture the next generation of talent.
Well done. Good stuff. Backing each other up.
Bob Simpson would build on Australia's success in the World Cup by taking fielding to a new level.
I was very anxious to get the fielding as good as we possibly could because A, it would make life tougher for the batsmen, but it gives a huge boost to the bowlers if you're picking up great catches, if you're stopping balls going for four where other players might let it go. And we could put on pressure on the opposition.
The academy would use a combination of sports science and psychology to improve young players, like Justin Langer.
I loved practicing. I loved the physical practice and the technical practice, but ultimately it was about learning about mental toughness, eliminating all distractions and seeing nothing but the ball released out of the bowler's hand.
The academy's system of rigorous training and discipline helped produce a group of players who became the backbone of Australia's success in the 90s. Yet it was a bowler with little time for the academy's strict rules who provided Australia with the magic that would turn them into the best side in the world.
Got him! Well bowled, Shane Warne. That was a beautiful delivery to get it. Dallas, clean bowled for 45.
All I wanted to do was play Australian rules football, but wasn't quite quick enough, wasn't quite good enough to play at the top level. I played reserves and under-19s, but never made it to play a senior game. So cricket was something that interested me in the summer, and I only really played because my friends did.
Born and raised in suburban Melbourne, the setting for TV series Neighbours, Warne was a product of the Australian dream of carefree affluence.
Shane Warne was a classic, rather pampered suburban boy adrift in Australian prosperity. Two things that he did have. He had a tremendous charm and affability, and he also happened to have the physical attribute of a superb wrist and superb fingers and an ability to make the ball absolutely sing.
Warne had honed his bowling skills in the domestic game with Victoria, but in England he was still relatively unknown, until an extraordinary Ashes baptism in 1993.
For an Australian, since the age of about 5, it's been belted into me that you can't let the Poms win anything. So I'm about to play my first Ashes test match, and I remember looking down the wicket and Mike Gatting was on strike, and I thought, I'm about to bowl Mike Gatting. He's a very good player at spin too.
Shane Warne's variety, apart from the stock leg spinner, he bowls a wrong'un or a googly. He has a top spinner and he also has a flipper.
Felt I was quite happy against spin. But this man came up and bowled this ball, which you could tell had a lot of spin on it because you could see where it's going to swing in, and swung in late, so you knew it had a bit of spin on it. But then it turned, and it turned an awfully long way from where it pitched just outside leg stump. Ian Healy, the Australian wicketkeeper, was going down the leg side waiting to collect it, and then all of a sudden it just changed course dramatically. And spun so much it missed my wide frame and just clipped the top of the off bail, and it you know, you normally hear the death rattle, but you didn't because it just lifted the bail off.
First ball, bail is off. He's bowled him. Gatting can't believe it. Dickie Bird, I suppose, can believe it. First ball, lethal.
Shane Warne's ability to make the ball turn so dramatically owed much to the way he gripped the ball.
I think that the trick to this is having a loose grip. And the reason I say that is because If you have a loose grip, it means you're relaxed when you're bowling. It helps you relax. If you've got it tight, it means you're really tense. So as you're coming into bowl, you're really tense. So if you can have a looser grip, you're more relaxed when you're coming into approaching the crease to bowl. I think that gives you an ability to bowl what you want to bowl.
All veils and misty.
You wouldn't believe it. He's done in between his legs.
Mike Gadding knows what it's all about. That's what the bat's for, son.
Ever since Ian Thomson and the all-conquering West Indies sides of the 1980s, fast bowling had dominated cricket. Spin was feared to be a dying art, until Shane Warne revived a bowling technique steeped in mystery.
And all of a sudden, Shane Warne has struck. What a wicket this is for Australia.
With quick bowlers, you know, you've got fear. Because if a ball at 150 kilometres an hour hits you, or 90 mile an hour hits you, it hurts. So the quick bowlers have fear. For us spinners, we have to try and deceive. We have to try and create sometimes something that's not really there. You have to sometimes create the illusion that the wicket is turning. Even if it's only turning a little bit, you've got to create that it's actually turning more than that. And that's where there's a lot of, oh.
Come on, boy.
Now he's getting in a tangle.
Wicketkeepers like Ian Healy and Adam Gilchrist would help generate the sense of anticipation around Warne's bowling.
Everyone always makes comment about heels first, and I guess to a certain extent myself, saying bowling Warne or bowling Shane, and try to create that wall of pressure around the batsman.
Oh!
Darling.
Australia would seek to increase the pressure by sledging, a constant stream of banter aimed at unsettling the opposition.
Pressure, Pidgey. Pressure.
Yeah, look, you can sense opposition players who are feeling pressure and they look a bit agitated, or, you know, there might be ways you can sort of not put them off their game, but get them thinking about something they shouldn't think about.
Oh, yes, stay there.
Patient, Pidgey. Got a smell of it, they're good.
Ears won't stop ringing long enough to hear those sweet words. What did you say?
It takes a strong-willed batsman to ignore a gang of gum-chewing Aussie fielders, questioning his ability, his place in the team, and his wife's honour.
It's all about getting you to play the man and not the ball. That's what it's about. That's what Shane Warne is absolutely brilliant at. When you face Shane Warne, you're up against two different sides of him. You're up against the technically correct, fantastic, skilled leg spin bowler.
Well, he's done it.
And you're also up against the man, the competitor, the guy who has a little sly comment as you walk past, maybe when you're not at the crease, trying to undermine you. He's trying to create a contest between you and him, not you and the ball, and that's what you've got to remain focused on.
On has bowled him out of the rough. Gooch not even playing a shot. Well, he was sort of attempting to kick the ball away, but that spun a long way.
Shane Warne's spin was the secret weapon in a team that had become a tough, close-knit unit famed for their athletic fielding. But to prove they were the best team in the world, Australia would first need to defeat the West Indies.
I remember when I first started playing, it was we talked about competing, not about beating those guys. So they were the ultimate cricketing machine, and they intimidated a lot of teams, including Australia.
Oh, he dropped it. He's put it down.
Steve Waugh really feeling it.
Steve Waugh grew up in Bankstown, the Sydney suburb that had produced Australia's belligerent Prime Minister, Paul Keating.
Why won't you call an early election?
The answer is, mate, because I want to do you slowly. I want to do you slowly.
A nation that had fought hard for respect on the world stage wasn't about to be bullied on the cricket pitch.
This really is going to be a great confrontation. This Kirtley seems to have fired himself up for this test match. Stephen Waugh won't take a backward step, and now we've got test cricket at its best.
Ambrose was just too good. I couldn't lay bat on ball. He was just past the outside edge, inside edge. I was getting a bit frustrated by that, and Kirtley, as he always did, would sort of bowl the ball and then he'd run down, he'd be a couple of yards away from you, just stare at you. And he's a pretty intimidating sort of sight.
Here's Ambrose.
And after one particular bounce, he was down there again, and I just said, why don't you, so-and-so, go back to your mark, and he didn't like that too much. And I gave him a bit more advice after that, and that's when things got out of control, and I was left standing there thinking, I've smashed open a hornet's nest here, what am I going to do? I mean, it's on TV, there's millions of people watching. You can't look like a coward and back away now, you've got to stand there and pretend you're tough. So that's really what I did. I was hoping and praying that Richie Richardson was going to come in and pull him away, because he was far too big for me.
And they're exchanging a few words out there, batsman and bowler. It's just shows you how serious these two are.
Didn't matter if there were hand grenades in the pitch or a bowler running in with a rifle. Steve Waugh always wanted to be there. He's the most stubborn cricketer I've ever played against.
Certainly fired the crowd up here, Tony, and I wonder if this will be a little bit quicker. And as you predicted, AB, it's got him fired up. Well, certainly brought the Test match to life. I don't know whether the viewers can hear the crowd, but they're certainly loving this confrontation, and I must admit I'm enjoying this from 150 yards as well.
In the deciding test in Jamaica, Steve Waugh would haul Australia into a winning position by scoring 200 runs over 9 grueling hours.
Had to give.
A beautiful straight drive. No need to run for that.
And they'll come for the fourth, which will bring him up his 200.
One of the greatest moments in his career. We've got Australians running out from everywhere here. Standing ovation here at Kingston.
On the final day of the test, it fell to Shane Warne to bowl Australia to their first series victory against the West Indies for 22 years.
Almost stumped. Stays.
It's in the air. And he's gone! And that's it!
Well, I think in '95 when we beat the West Indies, that was the changing of the guard, where they were renowned as the best side in the world, and they beat everyone. We were the first side to beat them in the West Indies for a long, long time.
Wow.
Warne, you having a good time?
Hey, why not, mate? Why not?
I woke up the next morning a little bit hungover. I had the whites on and the spikes, and I had the baggy green cap still in the head, so I had a nice indentation in my head for about a day.
And just let you have a listen to that.
By 2000, Sydney was hosting the Olympics, and Australia were the dominant force in world cricket, winning a record 16 consecutive Test matches. Their triumphs on the pitch reflected a country brimming with national pride and confidence. A mood Steve Waugh would evoke in his captaincy by connecting cricket to defining moments in Australian history.
Australia has a very simple and relatively unambiguous nationalism, and as a result he was able to draw on growing impulses, not just in the Australian team, but I think in the Australian nation in the period of his captaincy.
We respected the traditions of the game, but we wanted to create our own little traditions as well. Things like going to Gallipoli on the way to England was something that really bonded the side.
And the band played Waltzing Matilda as the ship pulled away from the quay. And amid all the tears, flag waving and cheers, we sailed off for Gallipoli.
talking about the battles, how there were 6,000 people killed in hand-to-hand combat on a piece of ground the size of 2 tennis courts, and we stood there, and this was where it actually happened. That bonded us as a side.
And he showered us with shell, and in 5 minutes flat, we were all blown to hell. Nearly blew us back home to Australia.
Stars of cricket paying homage to the heroes of our past. Cricket played a crucial role in the Gallipoli conflict. Today, at the exact spot it was reenacted.
I always had the feeling that it was more than just about the game and cricket for Stephen. There was a history of it, the tradition, you know, the honour of upholding that, you know, standard.
That standard is symbolised by the baggy green cap, awarded just once to Australia's cricketers and treasured throughout their career.
The baggy green is something that the players have always worn. It unites us as a group. It's something that's given out to very few people. It's got great traditions, and to me it was like a badge of honour. Every imperfection I had on my cap told me a story, and it was part of my journey with me.
We love the fact that our 2 national animals are on the emblem, the emu and the kangaroo, and they're 2 animals that they can't go backwards. They don't physically go backwards, so never take a backwards step. So that's a source of great inspiration. That's why it's become so iconic. It sort of embraces everything about cricket, which in turn, in Australia, we feel embraces what's great about Australia.
That's a great thing, look at that. Whoa, there's the proudest man in the nation right now. On it goes.
Today, a new generation of Australian players wear the baggy green cap. And at the beginning of 2009, they were still the #1 team in the world. Just. Australia might have regained the Ashes with a 5-0 whitewash of England in 2007.
Oh, that's close.
But it was the last bow for many members of a once great team.
Girl, I'm sorry. I just want you to come back. I'll admit Justin Langer really can back.
And I think we always had a good balance of experience and youth. Maybe at the moment, just lost a few too many players at once. You know, Langer, Martin, Gilchrist, Warne, McGrath. That invincibility, that aura, seemed to have maybe disappeared a little bit. Only time will tell.
Australia may no longer be the powerhouse that dominated cricket for almost 2 decades. But a nation that has come to define itself through sporting achievement will never lack the drive and desire to be the best.
We like winning, and we expect to win, and we should win, because we've got all sorts of...
And go out to conquer the empire of cricket.
Bowling.